Welcome students to session 5, and this session is titled Contrasting Types of Discourse, and this constitutes the third unit of the Ugrc 150 reader. In this course, what we seek to do is this. Very often when we are engaged in conversation, we want others to understand what we are saying. Unfortunately, however, we sometimes end up with disputes as a result of the way our views are expressed. The goals of this session are first to tell the types of disputes, and then see the difference between metaphors and proverbs. All these are in connection with language. Metaphors are linguistical, and proverbs also have something to do with language. And then we shall also discuss some vices that we should avoid when we are arguing or when we are expressing our views. These are vagueness and equivocation and ambiguity. We should avoid all these before we finally discuss the types of discourse. So I will start with the disputes that generate from our conversations. The first is a verbal dispute. And a verbal dispute is when two or more people are engaged in a conversation, and there is a dispute, and the dispute is about the meaning of a word. It means that if the word is clarified, its meaning is clarified, the dispute will go away. If the dispute is of this nature, then it is really not too difficult to resolve. However, the dispute might be difficult sometimes to resolve. When you have a dispute that can easily be resolved, the one that is called verbal. An example could be when two people are arguing, Ghanaians are arguing over the meaning or the significance, or when Panlogo dance should be performed. And this Panlogo dance, if one is saying, oh, this dance is a funeral dance, it can only be performed when somebody is dead and we are performing the funeral, whilst the other person says, oh, it is a dance that can be performed at any occasion at all. This dispute can be resolved. How? We just, look at the traditional sense of Panlogo and when it is recommended that it should be danced. This dispute can easily be resolved. However, there are disputes that we call substantive. These disputes are difficult to resolve because they come as a result of differences in facts or opinions about facts, or differences in background. The way people see things differ. If two people are in a dispute and both of them don't see things the same way, how they explain facts differ substantially, it will be difficult to get the two of them to agree on a common position. For instance, if someone's background or culture or things like that makes him think that anything that is real should be physical, and another person comes from a different background that suggests that anything that is real should be spiritual, and both of them want to tell the meaning of or identify what is real. They are looking for things to tell whether they are real or not. These two people will not agree, because one will only go in for things that are physical, the other will go in for things that are spiritual. This dispute, very difficult to resolve, because you cannot get one to abandon his or her position and adopt the position of the other. These are the two types of dispute that we need to note. You have examples, of these in the Ugrc manual and a few in this slide. So what we will do now is to go to topic 2 and discuss the difference between metaphors and proverbs. Luckily, we have talked about metaphors. And we said that a metaphor should not necessarily be understood literally, because they have significance. There are analogies in metaphors. Sometimes, certain qualities that we want to associate with things, with people, are exaggerated in the metaphorical language. It means that because metaphors are not to be taken literally, people are likely to give their own interpretations of metaphors. So we say that metaphors are also subjective. But how can we explain proverbs? A proverb has features similar to those of a metaphor. Both of them cannot be understood literally. When we mentioned metaphor, we gave examples. The Lord is my shepherd and the rest. Life is war. It doesn't mean that to live a life you must buy a gun. You can't understand this literally. The same thing applies to proverbs. Proverbs, have some important information behind them. So if you take an African proverb like one heard, an African proverb whose, the translation of which finds resonance in other cultures, is when they say that in Akan they say tikro enkwajina, which means one head doesn't go to council. How can you understand this literally? If you want to understand this literally, what you will be saying is that they are saying that there could be council that is composed of heads. But how can a head attend a council? Council means meeting. All right? So the proverb, one head does not go to council, is that, in other words, one person cannot constitute a deliberative meeting. You need different people to think about issues. All right? So this is what we mean. It is not literally said that heads go to council. No, because head is not a human being. Your head alone cannot walk or attend a council or a meeting. But it is human minds, human beings who attend council. And we are saying that this proverb is implying that one person does not have all the wisdom in the world to deliberate on every issue. So they have something in common, although they are not the same. But because they are subjective, different people will understand them differently. If you want to be understood, you have to be careful how you use them, because you could be misunderstood. But they also have important roles that they play. Having told you the difference between these two, I have to go on to discuss some common linguistic vices, the things that we should avoid when we are speaking or writing. These linguistic vices should be avoided because they don't make people understand us. The vices that we are considering will include vagueness, ambiguity, and equivocation. We have already talked about vagueness, but what we essentially said was that, the denotation of the word is not specified enough. So things become, we don't become certain of anything. In that case, anything that you want, you can throw it in and that will work. That is not good enough. And we gave an example where the definition, or this time it's not a definition, so I can say somebody would like to say that education for all is something that Ghana always lacked. And we said education for all, what does it mean? The word all. Education for all what? It means that this sentence has, the element of vagueness. And that is brought by the word all. So we need to specify what we mean or what we have in mind in order to know all the things, the people, the individuals that we are talking about. That is vagueness. So we should avoid using such words without specifying what we imply. The other word is ambiguity. But ambiguity will be explained also in connection with equivocation. When a word or a phrase or a statement conveys more than one meaning, then we can say that the expression is ambiguous. Because when left alone, you cannot tell which meaning one will adopt. It has different meanings. And there are several examples that can be given in this book. For instance, the sentence, John took off his trousers by the bank. By the bank, where is that? Are we talking about the financial institution? He stood in front of a bank or by a bank and took off his trousers? Or he went to the river bank? So if this sentence is left alone without any further specification, you are going to struggle to understand what it means. So it is vague. This is the sort of thing we are talking about. And we move on to equivocation. Equivocation and ambiguity are closely linked. How does equivocation arise? When you are writing a sentence or constructing a passage or arguing, and then you use a word that has different meanings, such as the ones we just talked about, and in the sentence or essay or argument, you never prompt the reader or the listener that you are moving from this meaning of the word to that meaning of the word. But then you use the same word in different contexts in the same essay without any direction. The person, whether he or she likes it, should get confused. And this is what we call equivocation. So when you use the word that is ambiguous because it has multiple meanings without prompting the reader what sense or which sense of the word you have in mind at different places, you have committed this fallacy. This thing should be avoided. It's a vice. It is something we should avoid. Having discussed this, we are now ready to talk about the types of discourse that are revealed in passages. What we mean is this: when you take any passage that will be given you in exam, it's likely to be one of the following. The first is narrative. Narrative is any passage which reports a sequence of events. that is, in order of their occurrence. For instance, a passage may be written to inform us of the presidents that Ghana has had in the Fourth Republic. It might say, for instance, that the first president under the Fourth Republic was Jerry John Rawlings, who ruled from this time to that time, after which President John Kufuor came into power, and then the narration goes on till the present day. When you have a passage that tells you the sequence of events, things that have happened in the order that they did, then that passage is what we call a narrative. All right? You may find examples in the Ugrc reader and the slides as well. The second is instruction. A passage is described as instruction if it tells us of, gives us a prescription or a directive as to how to do something or achieve something. That passage is called instruction. So it might tell you, in the passage, you might find somebody telling you to go to University of Ghana, take a vehicle from this, do this, and give you the instruction. Make sure that you arrive at the gate by this date, otherwise you won't get there. And then the instruction is given. Although this sounds somehow closer to a narrative, but there is a difference between a narrative and instruction. The instruction will tell you the things that you have to do if you want to achieve something. But a narrative may also tell you the sequence of events, not necessarily because it wants you to achieve something. You find, once again, examples in the Ugrc reader. And the third is a passage that we call rhetoric, or a rhetorical passage. In this passage, someone usually conveys his or her feelings in a very strong language in order to persuade. So if you find a passage in which someone who feels strongly about writing exams, maybe telling us, oh, exams, I hate exams. They make you so stressed up, they get you so confused, you grow lean, you do this, and I hate coming to the university because of this thing called exams. This is just a passage of my own, but you may find the thrust, the essence of the passage to be this. It means that the person does not just have a dislike for exams, but you can see how, terrible, how, difficult the person finds him or herself, how difficult it is for the person to even live a normal life under examinations. And he or she is presenting it to us in a language that, if you are not careful, you even have to sympathize with him or her. So this is what we call rhetorical passage. It doesn't mean that what the person is saying is true. That's what you should bear in mind. It doesn't mean that what he or she is saying is true at all. But what is true is that this person is trying to convey his or her feeling in a very strong language. Finally, we have a passage which will be an argument. You see, whenever we want to convince people to accept a point, we need to provide reasons. So when we provide reasons for the points or what we believe in, we have done or created what we call an argument. So in an argument, you have the reasons for the position that someone holds. The reasons for your point or position will be what we call the premises, And what these premises help you to conclude, which you are also trying to get others to adopt, is the conclusion. Oh, I have used conclusion and then conclude. Ideally, that should not be the case. What I mean is, when what the premises lead you to accept, which you also want others to accept, will be what we call the conclusion. So the premises are reasons for the conclusion. In other words, the conclusion is always based on the premises. All right? This is the difference between the two. But in a passage, you are going to have one conclusion all the time, because you could have one reason or more reasons why a conclusion is held. So if you are able to identify a conclusion, then the rest are premises. But how do you locate or identify the sentence which is the conclusion? We have what we call conclusion indicators. It is a word that comes before the sentence which is the conclusion. Such words include hence, therefore, consequently, and others. So if I say that today is Thursday, tomorrow is Friday, so the next will be Saturday, the sentence, so the next will be Saturday, will be the conclusion, because it has the conclusion indicator, so. This is all I mean. Thank you very much for this session.